Radio Hour, and this is our superhero episode where we've been playing songs all about superheroes. Most superheroes have an origin story told in a comic book or a graphic novel. If they are successful, they find an audience, and someday, maybe a screenplay comes out of that and maybe developed, and eventually TV or a movie comes out. I'd like you to meet a friend of mine who had his first comic book series published by Dark Horse Comics. It's called The Helm, and it follows a journey of a very unlikely superhero type. On the phone, we have, please welcome J.R.R.R. Jim Hardison.
Hello.
See, I know you as Jim Hardison, but now you are known as J.R.R.R. Jim Hardison.
Yeah, well, so I've been doing a lot of fantasy writing. And when you write fantasy, they start trying to stick R's after your name, like Stephen R. Donaldson or George R.R. Martin.
Oh, okay. Or J.R.R. Tolkien.
Right.
Yeah. They just
the R's they represent like credibility and humor in fantasy.
Oh.
So Stephen R. Donaldson, he wrote White Gold Wielder, which is great fantasy, but it's not at all funny. So he only got one R.
Oh.
And George R.R. Martin, J.R.R. Tolkien, they write great fantasy, and they're kind of witty and clever, and so they got two.
Oh,
and then my stuff's epically silly, so,
So you got the extra R.
I got three, yeah. They don't just give you those. You have to earn them.
You got to earn that, yeah.
Right.
So,
back in the day when you knew me, I didn't have any R's.
No. Now we have, like I said, we do have some history with one another because we both met at Columbia College in Chicago, and later I worked for you and your company called Image Dynamics, and we did a bunch of projects together, and that's when I knew you as Jim Hardison, or Jim,
Yeah, just regular Jim.
I didn't have to.
I was just a regular guy back then.
And you weren't that funny. You didn't have any R's. And
well, I like to think that I was funny.
You were funny,
but
yeah.
It wasn't that fantastic yet.
Yeah, no, it developed.
Yeah,
definitely. So
with time.
Yeah, so we also worked at Will Vinton Studios.
California Raisins. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, and then,
California Raisins. The Noid.
Oh, do you know the M&M commercials? When they were, the Christmas one that I worked on.
Oh yeah,
they remember
because they still run that.
Yeah, every Christmas. Yeah. But and then we did a 3D movie that's also playing in Las Vegas.
20 years later, that movie still.
M&M World or whatever it was called, right?
The M&M's Lost M Adventure.
Yeah, that's right.
Which plays at M&M's World in Vegas.
Yeah, and it's on. Some people have shot video of it and put it on YouTube, and ruined the whole effect now.
Right, because that's only in regular D instead of Special Magic 3D.
Right. So, which is really amazing to go see it in Las Vegas. And then you come out and there's all these M&Ms that you can buy. Yep. Yeah. So
it's a fantastic experience.
It is. It makes you just want to eat M&Ms all day. Yeah. So why don't you tell me how you came up with The Helm? That's the comic book you've done.
I had an opportunity to pitch comic book ideas to Dark Horse. So I went to my huge file of ideas that I keep in my secret cave of ideas, and was looking through it for things that seemed appropriately comic booky. And I'd had this idea banging around for a long time about a kind of unlikely superhero. I think those were the words you used. But it was kind of based on an analysis of superheroes as a group, and how, there's this problem, which is if they have a decent enough power that's really cool, almost invariably the superhero runs into a point in their story where either it's pretty evident that nobody can defeat them, or the villains have to get more and more outrageous in order to be able to defeat them. So it leads to this thing that I call comic inflation, where everything has to go crazier and crazier every time. Otherwise, it just seems stale. So I was trying to figure out a way to build a hero that could be more flawed and vulnerable than that. And I came up with this idea: what if you had a superpower, but the superpower hated you?
Ah, okay.
So that your own superpower was sort of your enemy. And that was the germ, as they say, of the idea.
So your hero is a guy named Matthew Blurdy.
That is correct, Matthew Blurdy.
Okay, now, when you do this, we both know the animation kind of pipeline where you come up with the idea for a script or a short storyboard, and then you take it and develop it into either deciding to do a 2D or a 3D project. How do you go about getting the story turned into a comic book?
So I actually, when I pitched the comics, a bunch of ideas to Dark Horse, and they picked the Helm as the one that they liked. And then I had this problem, which was that I had absolutely no idea how one writes a comic book, because, the thing that you see is mostly drawings with word balloons. And so actually, in talking to my editor, he said, oh yeah, there's a format you follow, the comic script format, where basically each page of the comic, you break it down into a separate script. Okay. So there's at least a page of script for each page that appears in the comic. And what you do is you say how many panels you think need to happen on a particular page, what happens, the description of the action that happens in each of those panels, and then what the people are saying to each other, or what the little meanwhile back at the ranch kind of boxes and word bubbles and things are saying. So you lay all that stuff out to give to the artist in a situation like mine. In some cases, when people are writing comics, the writer and the artist are either the same guy or they're working together. And so it's a more back and forth kind of process. But in my case, since I was just doing the writing, I had to lay out exactly what I wanted to see on each page, and then that gets handed over to the artist who interprets what you've written.
Are you able to come up with little sketches, little ideas, maybe I could have it from this angle or something like that? Would that give that to the artist, or would they just laugh at you? Or
I tried not to do any actual drawings, because they would just laugh at my drawings as a matter of course. I did do descriptions, like I'd say it's a 2-shot with the hero in the foreground and the bad guy in the background, or I would say, it's a 3-shot where we see the person who's talking positioned between the other two characters. So I tried to bring sort of cinematic language to it, because that was the only way that I knew to describe those things. I might say the character is on screen right and the other character is on screen left. The one guy's in the foreground, the other guy's in the background, and it's a wide shot or a medium shot or a close-up. I used that kind of convention in describing it. And then there is, ideally, a lot of leeway you leave to the artist to interpret it and to bring their skills in making a page flow. You want to give them enough flexibility that they can draw something that looks really good.
What happens, okay, so you've done the story, you've laid it out for the artist, and it's up to him to kind of do some rough drawings and then take it from there?
Yeah. So that process, generally speaking, or at least my experience of the process, I would write out the script, and then the publisher would send it to the artist. The artist would do thumbnails. So the very first versions were just really rough pencil sketches of the pages. So I'd get here's pages 1 to 10 of issue number 1. And I'd look at those really rough ones, and if there was anything that really stood out to me as, oh no, that's not what I intended, or that detail is wrong or whatever, I'd give them feedback on that so that the artist could make changes. And then they move from that to a cleaned up version where you can see everything clearly and all makes sense. And then from there they go to what they call inks, which are where those still somewhat rough drawings are taken by an inker who cleans them up completely and does really detailed fine line work. That can be the same person that drew the original art, or it can be a different guy. In this particular case, an artist named Bart Sears did the drawings and layouts, and an artist named Randy Elliott did the inking. And then once the black and white line drawings are done, then that generally gets scanned into the computer where it's colored. Some people still color by hand, but almost nobody does that anymore. So they color on the computer. That guy's called the colorist. And then once he's done, and at each of those stages, as the writer, I got to see the art, make sure that everything was good. There was one panel where the character gets knocked down on the ground, and they're supposed to be sort of steam coming off of his body. The colorist didn't understand that the line work was meant to indicate steam, and so he thought it was blood. So he drew the guy in this huge pool of blood.
Oh,
and,
that's a whole other story.
It looked like he was dead, so we had to change that. At each of those stages, you get to review the art and catch any issues or errors, like, oh, his expression looks too mad, or, that kind of stuff. And then finally, after all the art is locked down and signed off on, then they rough in the word balloons and the text boxes and things. Although sometimes, depending on the schedule, sometimes they would rough in those balloons once the line art was done, just so everybody understood where the text was going to go. And so there's a final pass where all the text is looked at to make sure that it's all correct and there are no
misspellings and all that.
So there's the editor does that typographical stuff, but I get a final pass at it to make sure that everything's the way that I wrote it and want it. And to look at any problems that come up, because every once in a while you get too ambitious about what you can fit in a word balloon. It'd be better to keep that a little shorter. So sometimes they'll say, like, we're having trouble fitting all this text on the page or whatever.
Okay. When you wrote the story, how long did that take to do? And also, how long did it take them to get to the, comic book form?
So I was amazed through the whole process, because my background is actually, like you said, in animation and in live action production.
Yeah.
And both of those things, by comparison, kind of take forever.
Right.
Because there's a lot of people that are involved, a lot of steps that you have to go through. You may be working with a team of 20 or 30 people on some animation projects, sometimes way more than that these days. But with the comic book, it was basically myself as the writer, there was an editor, and then there was the artist for the initial stage. And I write really fast, the treatment took a while. Basically, I just did a treatment where I was like, here's the idea of each page of the comic. I'd write a single paragraph description of the entire page. That took a couple of weeks to get through, like, here's how the 88 pages of the finished entire thing are going to go. Wow. But once I had that done after those, 3 weeks or so, then I could sit down and write a 22-page issue of the comic in a few days. And then it would go to the editor, and the editor would, feedback with questions about the structure or, any issues or details, and we'd work on that. So I'd say overall it probably took about a week to 2 weeks of my writing time per issue. And then we'd send it off to the artist, and he could be really fast. Most of the time he was quite fast about the thumbnail sketches. So within a few days, I'd start receiving pages, and I'd usually get them in chunks of 5 to 10 pages. So I could see an issue turned around from the time I sat down to write it until the time I was looking at layouts of the whole thing, 3 weeks sometimes. And then once they've got those layouts done, the inkers, the colorers, and the letterers are really fast as well. So maybe another week. So it was, oftentimes about a month of turnaround time to get a comic done. I know that sounds kind of long, but it always seemed magically fast to me. When we would work on the animated TV commercials, you could spend 3 or 4 weeks in pre-production, then spend, a week shooting it and et cetera, and then spend, 2 months doing the animation and get everything ready.
Right.
And that was for a 30-second commercial.
Right.
So this process seemed very fast to me.
Okay. Well, so I just want to say, again, this is called the Helm. You can pick that up at Dark Horse is publisher of this.
Yeah, so apparently anytime I'm going to mention any trademarked or copyrighted name, the phone will cut out. Is that correct?
I think that's what's going to happen. But I do want to find out about your first novel that you worked on. And
Fish Wielder is my epically silly epic fantasy novel. It's actually when they started sticking R's on my name. When I wrote The Helm, they were just like, this is silly and all, and it's kind of fantasy, but it's not epic fantasy, so you don't get any R's.
Right, so then you had to earn your R. So.
I did. I had to earn my R's. And with, each third of the book, I received another R. Until by the completion, I had all 3 of them.
I really like this book because it's very funny, and it starts off very like, Conan the Barbarian with a fish as his best friend. And he's always like, I love the how you have him, very his dialogue is very, serious and brooding and, and what does he always say? Mayhap.
Yep.
I
always imagine him talking sort of like Arnold Schwarzenegger, so he's like, mayhap.
Yeah, I got that when I was reading it. I'm thinking it's Arnold Schwarzenegger and a fish from, I don't know, Big City Fish or something. It's just funny to contrast between the two characters. So, oh no, did it do it again? It did it again. Okay. Poor Jim. He just keeps getting hung up on.
Nope, we can't mention fish. We can't mention. Okay. I think it was actually.
Don't say the fish word. Don't.
I'm not gonna.
Oh, I said it.
I think it was actually the actor's name.
Ah, that's it. Another trademark, right? Oh, you're right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so So anyway, this first novel is a very funny blend of both fantasy and comedy, and it's telling. And anyone that likes this kind of format or whatever genre should definitely pick that up. And now,
thank you.
Yeah, now you've got a new one, which I just started reading. The latest is Demon Freaks. Now,
yes. Let
me know if I'm wrong, but I have a faint memory that you started that when we were in Chicago or when we were in Portland or something. I remember you mentioned something, Demon Freaks, or you said something like that.
Back in the very early days. 1995, I think I started writing Demon Freaks.
Now that was 1995, not the
2095, back when I had to scratch it on the back of a shovel with a piece of chalk.
I remember it.
Yeah. I had to walk 4 miles in the snow each way with my feet. Yeah, no, so you are correct. I actually started writing Demon Freaks in 1995.
I knew it.
And I completed it, I think, in 1997. 1996, and I submitted it to a publisher, and the publisher was like, we love this. We've got this new line of books we're about to put out, and we think it would be great for that. And I was like, oh, excellent. And then I didn't hear from them for like 3 months. And so I thought, that's odd. I'll write them back, because back in those days you weren't allowed to call them, I guess.
Oh,
so I had to write to them and say, hey, what's going on? And they said, oh yeah, the lady that was going to run that new line of books has left to go to a different publisher and start a children's division.
Oh. Okay.
And I was like, okay, cool. So, but you're still going to use my book, right? And they're like, no, we killed that whole division. So then I just...
And then what? Okay, let's call him back. And the suspense is killing me.
Yes, I don't know where it left off, though. Like, I'm always talking long after you seem to have stopped hearing me.
Okay, you said, and they killed that division, basically, and said...
Yeah,
no.
They killed that division. So I said to the lady that I was... Actually, at that point, we did get on the phone, and I said, but you're still going to publish the book, right? And she said, no, we're not going to. So at that point, in utter dejection, I put it away. Then I didn't bring it out again until after Fish Wielder had been picked up by a publisher. I was like, I really like Demon Freaks. So I brought it out and I completely rewrote it and then submitted it to my publisher, who said, oh, yeah. And then they published that.
Oh, okay.
That wasn't really a good and accurate imitation of my publisher. She doesn't really sound like that.
Oh, yeah.
But, it'll have to do for now.
Right. Okay, well, she didn't hang up on us, so that's good.
Right, because I didn't mention her name.
Okay, do you want to mention her name?
No, I don't.
Because it's all about, it's all about content these days. So we got to do it really fast and really fun. Okay?
Content marketing.
That's right.
Viral.
We got to go viral with this, because otherwise, what's the point of living?
I find that a lot of my material turns out to be antiviral. Like that soap stuff that you put on your hand.
Yeah,
it kills 99.9% of all content marketing.
I have an auntie and uncle viral. They live in Des Moines, Iowa, and
nice.
Yeah,
Uncle Biotics.
Uncle Biotics. Why, Uncle Biotics? What are you doing here? See, it's a whole other story we can start making. Wow.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah. So now you've got these like 2 novels and a comic book. What next? What's happening now?
Well, I am Writing the sequel to Fish Wielder, because whenever you write epic fantasy, it has to be a trilogy. There's like a contract, and you're locked in. You know, Tolkien, when he wrote The Hobbit, they let him out of that one because epic fantasy hadn't really been well described yet. But by the time that he was writing Lord of the Rings, they're like, no, it has to be 3 books or forget about it. 3, 5, or 7, and I felt like 3 was the minimum requirement, so I took 3. So anyway, I'm writing this second one. I'm more than halfway through it. I'm about 56,000 words into Fish Wielder 2, A Fish Out of Water. See how clever that is? And and then I'm also working on a new graphic novel, unrelated to the previous works. It's called Beard.
Can you spell that, please?
BEER''D, as in like a beard on your face, but also like beer.
Beer.
Because it's basically about that time when the ancient Sumerian god of death came to Portland, Oregon, to try and open the secret back door to hell that's under Ladd's Edition, and that brewmaster and his hipster friends tried to stop him.
So you've got 2 more books coming out, so that's great. When do you think that might happen? I mean, when that might be...
When will you see the publishing date on those?
So right now, officially, the publishing date for both is soonish. Fish Wielder, no telling. I'm working on it, but I'm doing other stuff at the same time.
But you have a publisher that's saying, make do. Yeah, that's good. It's the same publisher? Yeah.
Got it. Yep. The publisher that's published Fish Wielder has indicated that they're interested in publishing Fish Wielder 2 as soon as it's ready.
Right.
And they've been kind enough not to rush me.
Oh, good.
Which is always nice, but perhaps bad for me from a completion perspective.
Right.
And then the new comic, the graphic novel Beard, we as yet, the artist and I have not sought a publisher because we are still in the writing and drawing it phase. That also has a tendency to make things go slowly because the artist is drawing, this is my pun now, he is drawing from personal experience because he is actually a beer guy. He is the beer guy at the Loyal Legion Hall in Portland, Oregon. So he is very deeply steeped in the whole Portland beer scene. And actually the main character of Beard is modeled after him.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. But so that means that he's got a full-time job making beer. And that does slow down the drawing process for 2 reasons. Reason 1, he's working a lot.
Right.
And reason 2, beer.
Beer. Right.
Yeah, which, as I understand it, can sometimes augment and sometimes slow down the artistic process. I've read that.
I've read that in many different journals and
on the Wikipedia.
Wikipedia, definitely. I've heard of that. I've actually written a few of those posts as well.
Yes, it needs substantiation, but I do believe that you can find that and you can quote that as a source.
And I think that's probably about all we can have today before you get hung up on again. But
excellent. Yeah, because Wikipedia is going to hang up on us.
Yeah, right. I'm surprised we didn't get that. They're fine with that.
Actually, since it's a built by the public thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, somebody. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, before we do get hung up on, I just want to thank you for coming in, as they say, talking to us about your different artistic ventures and all that. And
thank you so much for having me on the amazing show. I'm just sorry that I didn't get a chance to talk to the ambassador. The ambassador and I go way back.
I know.
But I know that he is kind of reclusive.
He's working on, I don't know, he comes in every once in a while. So
and the man's a genius. He's always got multiple things going on at once.
Oh yeah. I mean, being an ambassador, you have to, he's always trying to find the positive side of things, he's just amazing guy.
But thank you very much for having me on the show. I appreciate it. And it's always fun talking with you.
Okay, and so if people out there want to see more of your work, where can they go?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. They can go to www.jimhardison.com, and that has links to most of the stuff that I've written on that webpage, including like social media links and things like that. And if they want to pick up copies of the books, all of them, including the graphic novel, are available on Amazon, which is www.amazon.com for those who aren't familiar.
All right, so I'm going to end it now. So
no, don't, Jim, don't.
No, wait,
There's so much to live for.
So anyway, so that's Jim Hardison, J.R.R.R, Jim Hardison.
That's me.
Yeah, that's you. So
yeah.
So thanks again for talking to us, and we've been talking about superheroes this whole episode, and so this is a nice way to kind of end the episode by talking to you about your superhero character. So.
My pleasure.
All right. So I want to thank Jim Hardison again for coming in and talking about the Helm and letting us know all about what he's been doing. So we've got a lot of things we want to do. A lot of interesting guests are going to be coming up in the future. Everybody I talk to, they hear about a radio station in a college and they get all excited because they want to talk about their work. So why not? If you know of anybody that fits that bill, let me know. Maybe we can get them on here too. An email at heyjimr@gmail.com. If you like what you're listening to now, do me a favor, big favor. Go to my YouTube channel, Watch Cat Films, and become a subscriber. We have only 155 subscribers, and we want to get a lot more. So please do that. That would be so nice. We also have a blog called the Watch Cat Files, blogspot.com. Every Wednesday, we have Watch Cat Wednesday, and we try to put something out there about Watch Cat, or maybe something superhero related, or filmmaking related, or animation related. So check that out. Subscribe. Be our friend. Show us your support, and click on the ads on the blog. That always helps. You're David Hale hand, right?
Yeah, I always use the David Hale hand because I didn't want to impose on David Dodd hand.
Right.
And when they were doing one of the rushes for Fantasia, Walt was sitting right behind me. And so after we ran through the film, Walt leaned over and he said, "Well, Dave, how did you like that?" Well, I was 6 years old at that time, and I didn't get all this highfalutin music and dancing and all this stuff. And I said, I didn't like it.
Uh-oh.
And, well, that may be the last time I was ever invited to go and see the Saturday morning film.
Oh, no.